Hi everyone and welcome to my T16 and Bounty Hydra Wizard Guide. I've already mentioned this build recently when I was talking about the Firebirds in T16 and what build to play in there and in Bounties. This is the Typhon Hydra Wizard, which is the newest set addition for the Wizard. Has been in the game for a while, and with the teleport changes making the animation much faster and much more smooth, Wizard has actually ascended to S tier bounty class and basically one of the top builds in the game for any kind of T16 activity, alongside other builds like Wave of Light Monk, the God DH and Multishot DH. So the way this works is that you have these Hydras here. They have 5 heads which come from the 2-piece bonus from the Hydra set, and in total you can have 10 of those heads and they are obliterating everything for you, and all you do is essentially teleport around, put a Hydra here and there and teleport more. The great part about this build is it's extremely strong, so even when you are just starting out in a season, you can easily obliterate T16 of this as long as you have the full set and the right items, and you have to take a little bit of attention to one of the attack speed breakpoints. But other than that, it is rather tanky and you can just jump into, especially bounties. You don't have to do any kind of weapon swaps like the Multishot of the Nettas. You just go in and you kill stuff. I can demonstrate the power of the build quickly. So right now I don't have a single legendary gem. Usually you'd be using Enforcer, Bane of the Trapped, and then either Bane of the Powerful or Zaze. And I also removed all of my main stat from Paragons. So I just have those tabs filled here and movement speed. And I'm running around with 7k intelligence. I do have pretty decent gear, but still this is not really a high-end setup in any way. And you can see that the Hydras basically one-shot everything here on this, at least on the trash. And maybe you can find a lead here like this guy, and we have 2 Hydras and the Blizzard, and he also dies in a second. So these things go really fast, and also even the act bosses or something that you want to kill in bounties will probably melt in maybe 3 seconds or so with such a setup. Of course this is a solo game, but I am lacking a lot of damage from all these. Now to make this build functional, there are 2 weapons and 2 armor slots that you want to either wear or cube. And you also need the Ring of Royal Grandeur, so you can actually combine the 2 armor items. So for the weapons we have the Serpent Sparker, which gives you an extra Hydra, so you can actually summon 10 of those heads, and they also deal much more damage. The other one is Walker, which gives you infinite teleport, and it just makes it cost a bit of resources, but typically this is not really a big deal because you have Familiar Arcanaut, which gives you 4.5 resource generation per second. And like this you should easily out-regen whatever you spend most of the time, but you can still complement this with another resource roll or a topaz in your helm if you feel like you're running out of resources a bit. For your armor slots you need the Magistrate, which gives another big damage boost to your Hydras and also makes them cast Frost Nova all the time, so usually quite safe as well because they kind of emit this freeze here. And the other one is Tasker and Theo. This one is not 100% required, but it's still a pretty good damage boost. And typically you try to get this in the cube and wear the Magistrate. The reason for that is that you want to have a perfect 50% Tasker and Fear roll, because like this you can easily reach the breakpoint that you want and you don't really have to worry much about it. And the roll range on the helm is not that terrible. You can just get a good non-ancient 1 worst case, and if you have anything like 280 plus, that's usually fine, and then you can just go with the gloves in the cube. For jewelry I have a Stone of Jordan here. In groups, in T16 for example, you can go with Everise Band. Hail of Karini, always good for lots of damage reduction. We combine this with Storm Armor, Power of the Storm, which again reduces your arcane power cost by a little bit. And we have a Squirt's Necklace. You have to make sure that you always shield with this build, because from the 4-piece set bonus you get a lot of damage reduction for your active Hydras, but when you take damage you will lose those Hydra heads rather quickly. It's not a big deal in T16, but especially when you do this in GRs, you need to make sure you're always shielded. And in that case, Squirt's Necklace also goes well with that whole setup, because you're not supposed to lose the buff. In your offhand you will have the Winter Flurry, which is not 100% required, but especially on lower end, quite helpful. Gives you another up to 150% damage bonus, but you need to have Blizzard on your bar. So this is why we have Blizzard in this build. There are 3 different runes that make sense, and one of is the bigger duration, one is bigger AoE, and he has like much less cost. I usually go with Snowbound because it basically costs nothing when you do that. You don't have to use Blizzard very often. Typically I only do this on bosses or maybe on some big pulls or yellow elite. The remaining skills are Magic Weapon Deflection. This one gives you more shielding along with the Galvanizing Ward, So you do get a little bit from teleporting around and from casting the Hydras here, but the big one is this one, and this is also buffed by the Ashnagar Blood Bracer. If you run T16 with this in groups, you want to go with Nemesis Bracers here, but this 100% extra shield is essentially double toughness and definitely quite helpful. We have the Teleport Wormhole for the mobility, and the passives are Illusionist for mobility, for the Power Hungry, Galvanizing Ward, and Unstable Anomaly for the proc. Besides Galvanizing Ward, nothing here is really mandatory, so you can choose to drop some of the damage, you can choose to drop Illusionist, you can go with other things if you want. For example, you can go Elemental Exposure, or there's Blur, so there are definitely some options here if you want to go for them. Now for your attack speed breakpoints, the one I mentioned at the start, you want to reach the 30 frames breakpoint for your Hydra. You can easily check this by looking at this table here in Defeat Planner, so I also have the link there in the description. And you reach this by having a 50% Tasker and Theo and a 7% weapon and 2 more 7% rolls. So this is typically the best way to do it and the best breakpoint to get, because it just perfectly matches that breakpoint with 1.86 attacks per second, and you need 1.85 with 50% Taskers. In this planner here we also have the push variations, you have the speed GR variations and all these things, but I mostly wanted to highlight the T16 versions here, so you can check them out. I just want to mention it briefly. So when you go into pushing, you don't have Elder Walker, you have the Fragment of Destiny, which is another big multiplier, and you will have to use the Spectral Blade Barrier Blades instead of Magic Weapon Deflection. And this will give you pretty much equal shielding like the Magic Weapon, but you have to attack all the time. The good thing is you don't have to hit anything when you use a skill. You just can attack in the air and you will stack up your shields. You only need to hit something for Fragment of Destiny, which gives you a huge damage buff to your Hydras. And you also have Black Hole Absolute Zero, which gives you a huge damage bonus when you have big density. And you can snapshot this buff into your Hydras. So even when this drops, you have the increased damage for the entire duration of the Hydra. And the same with Arcane Dynamo, which is another reason to include the Spectral Blade here. So in GRs, you typically try to play around those snapshotting mechanics, and you attack 5 times, cast a Hydra, cast a Blizzard maybe, cast a Black Hole maybe, attack 5 times again, cast another Hydra. You don't always have to do exactly that same rotation, but it is definitely a huge damage bonus if you want to push with this build. The good part is this build is so strong that you can easily include some variations of this. When you're farming at least, you can have even Esoteric in there, you can remove the Wishing Hour here, so you can go with something like Gold Wrap into 16 easily, but make sure you get the attack speed breakpoint that I mentioned. So this is 2 attack speed rolls, and otherwise you're fine with this. I enjoy the Hydra build a lot, and I've been fine with this a lot in T16 and in bounties. It has been my go-to build for bounties the entire season, and I can definitely say this is at least on a level of a multi-shot DH, which used to be kind of the king of bounties. And it's just so smooth. You have the teleport to go over edges, you can kill a goblin really quickly without worrying about weapon swaps and all these things, so it's also quite convenient. One little tip that I would suggest though when you run in groups is that you have a homing pads for swapping in your inventory. So I always keep one of those handy here, and when I run bounties, typically you don't need it, but it can be nice sometimes. And that's it for this guide. I hope you also enjoyed the setup. I have been having a lot of fun with it, and it will definitely stay with us for a while, because this teleport change just made Wizard really amazing, and I will probably make Hydra Wizard in the future, even if I don't play Wizard season, just to fund the bounties more smoothly. So hope you liked the video, and I'll see you guys next time.